Republican Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma and Democratic Representative Eric Swalwell from California. Now, both of them sit on the intelligence committees in their respective bodies on Capitol Hill. Great to have you both here tonight.
Thanks for having me with you.
Okay, so let's talk first about this idea of him being classified as an enemy combatant. It was something that the president said he was open to today. Sarah Sanders in the briefing said she was open to it as well, but we get the indictment now. He's been Mirandized. That's not likely to happen at this point. Senator Lindsey Graham, who floated that idea with us last night here on Fox News at Night, said today the Trump administration missed an important opportunity to send a strong message to terrorists and make America safer. This is a huge mistake. Very sad. Start with you, Senator. What do you think?
I think it could be tried here in the United States. Obviously, the crime was committed here on our property in the United States. It was clearly a murder trial. There is terrorism connection to that. I think we can pull that out through our traditional court system. The reason to be able to move him to Gitmo is if he's connected to a larger network, and we want to be able to engage on that larger network size. We don't know that at this point. It looks like he was radicalized online. It might have been through some others. We should ask those questions and find out. I think that's why the U.S. Attorney is kind of holding back to say we could do that. If we find out more that he's connected to a larger network, then we move him off.
Congressman, what about you? Because, you know, when you look at this, there are things that can happen as an enemy combatant. You can have more time to question this individual. You may get more intelligence from them. I think that's Senator Graham's frustration.
I say let him face 12 New Yorkers. I trust the American juror. I was a prosecutor before coming to Congress, and, you know, I still believe that the American criminal justice system is the best in the world. And, you know, let him spend the rest of his life in jail, and I think, you know, show the world that we have faith in our own system.
And he's potentially, with these charges, I understand, potentially facing the death penalty as well. So we'll see, and we do expect there could be more charges to come. Meantime, it provokes this conversation about the diversity visas and whether that's the way that he came in and what it says about tightening these issues. I know you all probably have differing views on vetting, how we're doing with that. But when I talked to folks on the Hill today about this idea of rolling back diversity visas, it was something the Gang of Eight tried. That Senate bill passed. It died in the House. So where do you two stand on that and getting rid of that particular issue? More than 1 million people have come to the U.S. under that diversity visa system.
Sure, and the 1990 law that was referenced was actually supported by Newt Gingrich and Mitch McConnell, a guest that you'll have later tonight. I support comprehensive immigration reform, which would, you know, expand H-1B visas, worker visas, agricultural visas, and also reform, you know, family visas, and it got rid of the diversity visa. I think, you know, of course, we want to, when an attack like this happens, we want to look at where the individuals come from, what their family connections were, if they were still, you know, in connection with somebody who, you know, is talking to terrorists abroad. But I trust, you know, Homeland Security and the vetting they're doing, and a lot of the evidence suggests that he became radicalized years after he came over here, and that's the hardest person to detect.
What about that? What about our vetting process? Could it be, listen, the president again tweeting tonight just before the show saying we're going to ramp up extreme vetting. It's a phrase he likes to use. What do you make of what we're doing now?
Well, the vetting that we do now is a year or a year and a half long process. So you don't just get the visa lottery, as it's often called, and then you're here the very next day. So you may be selected to be able to come to the United States and be able to get a green card and become naturalized. But it's not an immediate process. There still is a vetting. The question is, on the vetting for these individuals, do we know positive information about them? Often our vetting is done just based on the negative. Are they on the terror watch list? Do we know of any criminal background? If we don't, then they're assumed to be okay, so we don't get the positive side. I think that's really where the extreme vetting goes, is to be able to ask, do we know positive information about them rather than just a lack of negative? This visa lottery system, this diversity program that's out there, is designed for small countries all around the world, so our nation will be more diverse. I would tell you, our nation was a very diverse nation before 1990. I'd like to see our immigration move to where they're actually bringing something to the United States we need, whether it's a stonemason that's needed in an area or whether it's a computer engineer that's needed in an area. If they're bringing a skill that the United States need, I think that should be a higher priority than just saying we want to open up 50,000 individuals to become American citizens that don't necessarily bring a certain skill to us.
Many of these changes that we're talking about would have to be part of immigration reform. And Senator, I got to be honest with you, there's a lot of split within the GOP. That's no secret that even trying to get to the same page on that within the party is going to be difficult, much less coming up with something bipartisan. I mean, when I think about issues like E-Verify, we talked about that a little bit last night on the show. A lot of people think that it's a common sense measure, and yet it doesn't seem to have full support. Republicans seem to be split on a lot of these key issues.
There are some splits and some divisions. There are some areas of unity as well. What's interesting to me on E-Verify, no one has the problem with the I-9 form. Everyone in every job in America fills out a W-2 and an I-9 form. That I-9 form is to verify their status. But what it doesn't do is really take the next step and tell the employer whether that's actually the person that's looking at you with false documents or real documents. So there's no reareason we can't combine the I-9 and the E-Verify together into one step rather than to have two steps on that.
And I think we have an opportunity, as we head into the end of the year and some of these decisions that we have to make to find bipartisan support on the DREAM Act. The president, told...
Is it possible?
Well, he told Leader Pelosi and Schumer that he would sign it, and so I hope we can.
But then he put out a list of like 70 things that would have to go along with the DREAM
And there
Act.
is, and what the president's talked about, and I have a bill called the Succeed Act that tries to deal with what it was been the DREAM Act for a while. The DREAM Act, of course, has been around 15 years. It's been tried 3 different times, and it's failed every time, including when Democrats had the House, the Senate, and the White House. They couldn't even pass the DREAM Act. We're looking at a more conservative version of that to say, what do you do with those kids that are in DACA? But the president's been very clear that when we do something legislatively to be able to solve the issue of those kids that are in DACA, which is a very difficult situation for them, we need to also do border security. We also need to handle the rest of what we're doing in immigration. Not a giant comprehensive bill that includes everything in the world, but you should do border security. That is an area where we have common agreement on how are we going to actually keep the nation safe. Let's find those areas of common ground. Let's pass those and move forward.
Well, I have both of you because you're both on the intelligence committees in the Senate and the House. I want to ask you about where we're proceeding on the Russia investigations because we have indictments from the special counsel this week. That seems like it's far from over. Let me ask you first in the House, how are you proceeding? Are you confident that you're going to get the answers the American people deserve?
I thought both Senate and the House had a productive hearing today. We learned that we still don't know the full extent to how the Russians weaponized social media, but that there was an acknowledgement by the social media companies who testified that there is a duty going forward to warn law enforcement if they see an attack underway. So I hope we can build off of that, for more bipartisan findings and reach a conclusion.
Yeah, I think we can get to a conclusion. We work very hard to keep this nonpartisan as we work through it, as much as Washington, D.C. can do anything nonpartisan. We tried to be able to walk slowly together on it, but we're trying to evaluate how did classified information get into the public eye? Did any American try to cooperate with the Russians to try to interfere with our election? And then also this whole conversation about social media and online. How did they do it? What did they do? And how do we respond? We have elections coming up as soon as next week in Virginia, but then a whole series of elections happening next year as well. But this is not just about elections. One of the things that came out of the testimony today is the Russians and their engagement in social media last year during election year, only 9% of what they did was election related. The rest of it was social areas where they're trying to take both sides of every argument, elevate the volume, whether it was immigration, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's on the NFL that's happening right now, all those areas they're engaging with. They're not starting the argument, but when they find an area where Americans are arguing, they're trying to amp up the volume.
Gasoline on the fire, something that should concern us across all party lines.
And unity, I think, is the best antidote.
It is. We need to work on that.
Yeah.
And look, we have you here tonight together. So Congressman Swalwell, Senator Lankford, great to have both of you.
My pleasure.
Thanks for joining the conversation.